Hello everybody and welcome back to my Rastakan's Rumble card review. Today I'm going to be doing the Mage cards of the expansion, and let's just get right into this. First up we have Daring Fire Eater. I have to say I really like this card. A 3 mana, deal 3 damage, I think is perfect for Mage, and the deck I want to put it in specifically is going to be Odd Mage. I think it'll be really good. 3 mana, 4 damage, and a 1/1. Sounds amazing to me. And the synergies it has with the other cards of this expansion and previous expansions is just really good. And I feel like this card deserves an 8 out of 10 because I feel like Odd Mage has enough pieces now to be a real viable deck. High tier 2, maybe tier 1, but that maybe be overstating it a little bit. But I want to play this deck a lot. I think it'll be good, and I hope to make it good, whether or not it is or not. After that, we have Arcanosaur. I'm a little disappointed in this card. It's just a worse Duskbreaker, and Duskbreaker is really good, but Duskbreakers and dragons in general, their trigger sort of ability thing is just a lot better for what Duskbreaker is trying to do rather than Arcanosaur, because it's a lot more dangerous to use Arcanosaur because you might hit your own things, especially if you have to play things in order to get its effect next turn. So I'm going to have to just give this a 2 out of 10. I don't see it being played in Elemental Mage, which isn't even really a big deck right now, as far as I know. So I don't see this being a card that really brings Elemental Mage together and making it more viable than it is now. This next card, however, I'm a little bit more afraid of. Elemental Evocation. I hate how high rolly this card can be. Getting a turn 1 or 2 Baron just makes me sick. I think this card has a really high power ceiling, but I don't think it'll be played, if that makes any sense. I think it's really strong, but I don't think anybody's going to want to play the really high roll deck in order to get these sort of games. And I don't think the card is necessarily what you want to play in a mid-range Mage deck that plays elementals, but I could be completely wrong. But I'm just going to rate this a 5 out of 10 because it is a strong card and it does have strong implications, but I don't feel like it's going to see that much play. Our first rare is Pyromaniac, and I just love this card. This is exactly what I want for this Odd Mage deck. A good payoff card that helps with your hero power, gives you card advantage, and it's a 3 mana 3/4. That's amazing. I mean, granted, it's not going to be as good as Tower Creeper, I feel, 9 times out of 10, but still, it is a 3-drop that provides card advantage and is good stats, and it synergizes with one of the themes and/or archetypes that they're going for this expansion, and it goes great with the Loa if you're trying to get that hero power damage requirement. I think this card is just good. Maybe not an auto-include in this Odd Mage that I feel is probably going to be tier 2, but I think it'll be top of the list on considerations, or maybe just a one of, so I'm going to give this card a 6 out of 10. Because I can see this card being completely overlooked by a lot of decks, especially when Tar Creeper's still around, and other better 3-drop cards, in my opinion, just card advantage wise. But I am still going to hold this card dear, and I'm going to definitely try it out. Spirit of the Dragonhawk, however, I don't see being played that much. Mainly because it's not odd. If it was odd, even if it was 3 mana, I can see it being played a little bit more, but as it is right now, and the very few synergies that can be put into the deck without having the Baku's improved hero power, I don't think it'll be played much at all. Reluctantly, I'm going to have to give this a 3 out of 10. I really like the Loa, I really like this archetype, but I feel like it only belongs in Odd Mage, because Odd Mage, having 2 base damage instead of 1, would make this card so much better, but I feel like it's just sadly lacking at the 2 mana mark. Then we have Scorch, a card that Elemental Mage probably won't use for the simple fact that I don't think they need early game removal unless the meta is going to be really heavy into aggro, and they'll need the early game removal. So just because of that, I'm going to have to rate this card a 4 out of 10 right off the bat, because I don't think it'll see much play. Like, Wing Blast was another good card, and Spell Hunter was a good deck when it was released and still is, but that card didn't see any play, and it's fairly similar. Granted, the triggers may be easier or harder depending on the deck, but I feel like unless there is just this tidal wave of aggro in competitive, I don't think this card's going to see any play. Our first epic is Blast Wave. I don't have a lot of faith in this card. It does have a really cool overkill effect and does synergize well with the previous archetype of spell damage mage, but I feel like it's a lot of work to get a fairly good payoff in my opinion. But I think any mage deck would rather play their classic Dragon's Furies, Meteors, Blizzards, and I feel like it just doesn't deal enough damage. Maybe if it dealt 3 and cost 6 or even 7, I'd be a lot more interested in this card, but you would have to kill a bunch of Silverhand recruits to really get enough value off of this, in my opinion, to be playing it over the other mage board wipes. And just because that, I don't think they're going to be swapping out the already established board wipes for this one. I'm going to give this a 4 out of 10. I don't see it being good enough to be played competitively or even reliable enough. Next up we have Splitting Image. Probably the best mage card of the expansion that's not going to be put into anybody's decks. I feel like this is one of those cards that you would love to get from Discover effects or get a random mage spell effects, but it's not quite the card you want to have in your deck every game because it could be a dead card a lot of times. I feel like it's not a good enough secret. It's a good card. I don't think it's just a good enough secret to be played. A lot of the other secrets you can play around them, but I feel like this one's especially easy to play around if you have more than one minion, and I don't think it's reliable enough to be played in the main deck list of any competitive mage deck. Because of that, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10. I don't think it's going to see a lot of play, but I think it's a good card nonetheless because Mage does have a lot of Discover Mage cards or Get Mage cards or random Mage spells, and I think that alone will cause it to see more play than it normally would. Our first legendary is Hexlord Malcras, and God, I wish this was odd, but besides that, I think it's really good in a control game or a control meta where you want card advantage but not from drawing it from your deck by card generation, which allows you to last longer in a fatigue game where fatigue is going to be the biggest killer. But the effect, I feel, is a little greedy because typically in your opening hand as a control deck you want your control answers. But with this in your deck, you always think to yourself, like, how can I get the most value out of this card? And in the late game, I don't think you're going to want to get your Tar Creepers or your Fireflies out with this. You want your Loas, you want your Legendaries to come out from this. So it causes you to mulligan the opposite way you kind of should as a control deck. But if there is a control meta, I see this being very, very good. So until we hit that control meta, I can't rate this card above a 4 out of 10 because I don't think it has a home right now. But if Control Mage really needs that late game, I think this would be a perfect fit. And our second legendary is Jan'alai the Dragonhawk. 10 out of 10 right now, just going to say it. My favorite card of the set. I love it. The design is cool. I really like its requirements, and I love the payoff. I did not get to play Ragnaros much while I was in Standard before it got rotated, but I feel like even though it is a harder to get Ragnaros, I feel like Ragnaros is still Ragnaros. Ragnaros is really, really good. And especially now that he's an elemental, and elemental mage could really use him, especially if you have Frostland's Jaina out already. And besides that interaction, 8 damage, 8 health, yada yada, that's so good. I think it's just a good card. It's kind of like Dragoncaller Alana, where it's just a really good card to drop on its own when you need to win the game finally as control. And just for that, I'm going to stick with my 10 out of 10, mostly because it's my favorite card of the set. But I think it is good enough, and it is going to be one of the main reasons why an odd mage deck might be tier 2, maybe even tier 1, is because they just got another really good powerhouse card that can help swing the game by itself. And that's it for my review of the Mage cards this expansion. I feel like they did a really good job with the archetype that they added. I like the couple of elemental cards they splashed in there, though some of them seem really gross and overpowered, while some of them seem a little on the weaker end. I feel like they did a good job with Mage this expansion, and I feel like I'm really going to enjoy this odd Mage deck. It might not even be tier 2, like I said earlier. It might be a tier 3 or a trash deck, but it's something I really want to try out, and I have to tip my hat to them of making a deck that I really want to try, and it looks interesting, and I feel like I'm going to enjoy playing it a lot. But with that said, thank you all so much for watching. I'm going to get most of them out this weekend, I hope. And thank you for sticking with me, and thank you so much again for watching. And I'll see you all in the next episode.